Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has warned if Hamas doesn't disarm, then, quote, we will disarm them. His strong language comes as Trump declared phase 2 of the ceasefire deal has begun, despite the bodies of 20 Israeli captives still being held in Gaza. Our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett reports.
They know I'm not playing games.
With the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas still intact, an impatient Donald Trump on Tuesday pushed Hamas to proceed with the second phase of his 20-point ceasefire plan, ending Israel's war on Gaza.
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
On Monday, both Israelis and Palestinians celebrated phase 1 of the plan, which included the swap of 20 living captives held since October 7, 2023, for about 1,700 Gazans imprisoned by Israel. But Hamas fell short of returning all 28 deceased Israeli captives, a condition of phase 1, arguing the bodies were buried under the rubble caused by Israeli airstrikes. President Trump reacted to the delay on Tuesday, writing, "A big burden has been lifted, but the job is not done. The dead have not been returned as promised. Phase 2 begins right now." Phase 2 of Trump's peace plan calls for Hamas to disarm, something it's not agreed to. It's one of the many obstacles to lasting peace in the region. This is another. On Monday, Israel shot dead at least 9 Palestinians in Gaza. Despite the ceasefire, Hamas has accused Israel of violating the terms of the truce.
President Trump insists Hamas made a verbal agreement to disarm through his people at the highest levels. But he's refused to specify what will happen if Hamas does not comply.
Let's discuss all this now with Lorenzo Camel, who's a professor of international history at the University of Turin and is joining us from Rome. Thank you so much, Professor, for being with us on Al Jazeera. From a historical perspective, how does this ceasefire and the push for disarmament fit into past attempts between Israel and the Palestinians? Are there any precedents that give us clues about what might happen next year?
Yes, first of all, let's remind everyone that today is a crucial anniversary because on October 15, 1948, so precisely 77 years ago, the Israeli forces started the Operation Yoav in the Negev. And as a result of that operation, the number of refugees in Gaza rose from 100,000 refugees that arrived in previous months to 230,000 refugees. So more than double the number of refugees. And this changed the demographic balance in Gaza for good. At the time, Michael Gallant, that was the father of Yoav Gallant, the former Minister of Defense of Israel, that said that Palestinians are human animals, participated in that operation, the Operation Yoav, and named his son Yoav Gallant, precisely to celebrate the operation that changed for good the demographic balance in Gaza itself. That said, there are several presidents, and these presidents tell us that this agreement to a large extent is a facade. It's a facade in which all actors have acted as if they agreed about all points that were there, but actually they agreed just on the exchange of hostages and of prisoners and so on. On all other aspects, if you look at the details, they completely disagreed and they did not accept. For instance, Israel was very clear. Netanyahu was just 1 meter away from Trump in saying that it won't accept the Palestinian National Authority in Gaza. Hamas itself never said that they will hand over the weapons. It just said it will hand over to a Palestinian state when a state will be established. So once again, we can continue, and some aspects were just mentioned, but it is clear that it's just a facade. It's a kind of a Palestinian Versailles in which the main actors are there to enable the war to turn the page, but then we know the structural violence will be there, will remain there precisely as it was, perhaps even worse.
It was great to get the historical perspective and context there, Professor, on October the 15th and what it's meant for Palestinians. And judging from what you say, given the past, it's really difficult to see how Israel will live up to its commitments under this deal. We have also another actor here, the U.S. President, Donald Trump, which has threatened Hamas and pushing them to disarm in phase 2 of the plan, something, as you said, Hamas has never really agreed to. And historically, armed groups in the region rarely disarm without major political guarantees, right? So do you see Hamas disarming under the current conditions? And what do you think the guarantees would be if they were to agree to disarm?
First of all, let's stress that both actors are not reliable. The difference is that while both actors are not reliable, we are in a context in which there is an occupying power and an occupied population. So there is a clear imbalance there.
Yeah,
so
but
it's not a matter
is Israel the least reliable of the actors?
Yes, let's say that I think that both are quite non-reliable, but once again, having an occupying power, nuclear power, and millions of people under occupation, it's clear that the structural situation is there. Then you said about deal. I want to remind you that what Moshe Dayan, Israeli general, said that if you want to make peace, you make peace with your enemies, not with your friends. So from the perspective of the Palestinians, if you think Menachem Begin, Yitzhak Shamir, they were the head of the organization that committed major crimes against Palestinian civilians, and they became prime minister of the state of Israel. And also today, of course, the Israeli authorities are perceived by Palestinians as a permanent occupier that denied their right of self-determination. And Netanyahu itself was, there is a warrant for him by the International Criminal Court. So we go back to the words of Moshe Dayan. If you want to make peace, you speak with your enemies and not with your friends. And this applies to Israelis and Palestinians alike.
Now, how might regional actors, Egypt and Qatar, who've mediated between Hamas and Israel, respond to the U.S.'s more unilateral push on disarmament of Hamas? How do you see regional actors intervening in the next phases of this plan?
Yes, first of all, I mean, Egypt is a crucial actor. It's the second, since the Second World War, Egypt is the second recipient of U.S. aid. And the first one, of course, is Israel. And this huge amount of funds does not come, let's say, in a benevolent way. It's a way of controlling the country. And Assisi, to a large extent, besides being one of the worst and most despotic figures in the political level in the region, it's a figure that, to a large extent, besides some criticism, must abide to the interest of the U.S. in the region. So in that sense, I would say that to a large extent, there is a huge gap between populations on the ground and many of the regimes in the region. Many of these regimes are bound to the interests of the U.S. And Israel in this region, while millions of people in this region, of course, would like to shape a completely different path that takes into account the right of the people, the right, first and foremost, of the Palestinians.
Professor, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for bringing us the historical perspective and context to this situation in the region. Thank you so much. Professor Lorenzo Kamel from the University of Turin joining us there from Rome.
This news is reaching you from Ogulaha Vanguards Limited, the true face of Niger Delta. We tell your story better.